Hey guys, it's Alpha Typer, and as promised, I'm back with my next video. Today's video is going to be the first video in a series of videos that I'm calling the Comprehensive Guide to Nitro Type. Now today I'm going to be talking about something that makes Nitro Type a lot different from a lot of other typing websites, and that is, of course, as you probably know, the Nitro. The Nitro has been around for pretty much ever since the Nitro Type website was created, and it's gone through a lot of changes, and I'm going to be explaining those today, as well as how to properly use Nitros so that you can win races more often and easier. First of all, before we go into any of the background history or any of that stuff, let's talk about what actually is a Nitro. Now, I'm sure you guys already know this, but for those of you who don't, a Nitro is basically a free skip that you can use on any word. It doesn't matter if it's a number, doesn't matter if it's a very long word or very short word, you can use a Nitro to skip it. As of the time of this recording, every racer gets 1 Nitro or 0 Nitros depending on their speed. If you're slower, you don't get a Nitro because the races are just so short that sometimes there's only 5 or 6 or 7 words, sometimes even less than a sentence, and so 1 Nitro could literally boost you for half the race, which would defeat the main purpose of Nitro Type, which is to get better at typing. Now, there's a lot of controversy surrounding Nitros because some people say, well, Nitros are awesome and you can use them to skip words. But there's also a bunch of people who say, well, Nitros are just for babies, right? You don't need to skip words, just type them. And if you use Nitros, then you're not going to improve your typing speed. For all of you out there, let me make one thing clear. I have used Nitros and was using Nitros for 4 years, ever since I started on the Nitro Type website. And since I joined the Nitro Type website, my speed has gone up from around 30 words per minute to now at around the 115 to 125 words per minute range. So yeah, if you use Nitros, you might learn how to type tricky words a little bit slower because you're skipping them all the time. But honestly, to me, it doesn't really make a difference. Personally, I use a Nitro pretty much every single race because you can get achievements if you use Nitros, and also you get extra cash if you win the race, which is what Nitros can help you do. Okay, so now that we've covered the basics of what a Nitro is and the controversy surrounding them, let's jump into the history. Originally, you could use up to 3 Nitros per race. It didn't matter what your words per minute was. If it was 3 words per minute, or if it was 150 words per minute, you could use up to 3 Nitros per race. However, you had to earn Nitros. You could do this either through winning a race. Winning a race would earn you 2 Nitros, or getting second in a race. Getting second in a race would earn you 1 Nitro. You could also earn Nitros through mystery boxes. I believe the most amount of Nitros you can get in a single mystery box was 20. In addition to this, you could also buy and sell Nitros from the dealership. I believe it was you could buy 10 Nitros for a cost of $20,000, and you could buy them in sets of 10, so you couldn't just buy 1 Nitro, you had to buy them in at least groups of 10. Also, you could sell Nitros at $500 per Nitro. This means if you're a person who doesn't use Nitros and every race you got first, or most of your races you got first or second, you could sell your Nitros and make an extra $1,000 to $500 per race. I like these game mechanics because if you were a fast racer and knew how to use the Nitros smartly, then you could earn more Nitros and continuously get better and get more Nitros and win a lot more races and earn more cash. However, if you're trying to improve your words per minute, and say you got first on a race, you get 2 extra Nitros, that's another $1,000, which is good because the people that don't like to use Nitros can earn money even if they get first or second and they get all those Nitros. They can sell them and earn money, which they can use for other stuff like dealership or team rewards or stuff, anything they want, which I really like those mechanics of the game because it gave you more freedom. If you were a Nitro addict, you could earn Nitros and earn more Nitros by using more Nitros. And if you weren't, then you could just sell them in the dealership and you could get money back. On September 7th, 2016, this changed. Now, if you were below 10 words per minute, if your average was below 10 words per minute, you would no longer be able to use Nitros. They were locked. You could no longer use them. If you were between the 11 and 20 words per minute averages, you could use 1 nitro. And if you're between the average of 21 and 30, you could use 2. And any average above 30 could use the full 3 nitros. So you could still buy or sell nitros, you just couldn't use them if your speed was too low, which honestly makes a lot of sense. If you have 3 nitros and you're only at about 5 words per minute, and a nitro type race being less than a minute, then you could skip 80% of your race just using nitros. So I'm glad that they added this restriction. When version 3 rolled around, everything changed. You could no longer buy or sell nitros. You could only earn them in races. Now this update was actually quite recent compared to the history of Nitro type. It was only released last year, 2019, with version 3 of Nitro type. The last overhaul of Nitros occurred on November 30th of 2019. Up to this point, you had to earn nitros, and you never started with any nitros when you created an account. On November 30th, however, you could no longer earn nitros in mystery boxes, nor from the racetrack. Instead of earning nitros individually, you now had an unlimited supply of nitros. Also, you could only use 1 nitro per race instead of the maximum of 3. In addition, if your speed was below 15 words per minute, you could no longer use nitros at all unless you got your average to above 15 words per minute. Why such the big change? Well, the administrators argued that players who had been playing for a long time had amassed thousands and thousands of nitros, and they could consistently use 3 nitros per race and gain 2 from winning that race. However, players who had just created their account started out with maybe 5 to 10 nitros depending on what their mystery box was, and simply put, they didn't have as good a chance of beating the more experienced players who had a nitro stockpile. For me personally, I didn't really like this update, because, the whole point of Nitro type is to get faster at typing. Nitros are just a fun add-on to kind of make the race more exciting and more unpredictable. Also, if you had been on Nitro type for a long time, you would have gotten quite a few nitros, and so that kind of rewards you for being on Nitro type for a long time and improving your speed. It also motivates newer players to race on Nitro type more to earn more nitros and improve their speed. Sure, they might lose a bunch of races at first, but I believe that would motivate them to try to type faster and beat the racers who might have 3 nitros, whereas they might only have 1 or 2. And that concludes the history of nitros on Nitro type. So before I end the video, I'd like to leave you with a few tips on using nitros. Now you may know most of these yourself, but hopefully there's one tip that you may not have heard of that will improve your likelihood of winning every single race that you're in. So my first tip is that never ever use a nitro on the first word of a race, unless it is a super long number sequence or a word like photosynthesis or pachyphylosaurus. Using a nitro on the first word of your race often might get you ahead at first, but generally just throws you off because now your hands aren't on the home row. Your pinky was dragged over to the enter key to press the nitro, and you're not ready to start the race. Save your nitro for in the middle or in the later game when it's going to make a bigger difference on who wins the race. Sometimes it's better to use a nitro on a number sequence than on a large word, because numbers are just way harder to type than longer words. A nitro can be more effective when used on a number sequence than on a longer word. For example, the word breakthrough, although long, is arguably easier to type than the number 1984. Now, there might be some of you who are really good at typing numbers, so if this isn't you, then feel free to use nitros on longer words instead of numbers. Now, I'm sure you do this already, but an incredibly effective way to use a nitro is when you're in a tight situation with somebody else who preferably has already used their nitro in the race, and you're at the end of the race, you're neck and neck, and then you use that nitro on the final word to boost yourself to win the race. This is a highly effective tactic. It's also known as nitrolling. If there's no longer words in the text, then I highly recommend doing this at the end of the race. And lastly, my final tip on nitros is to use them on words that have punctuation at the end of them. The way nitros work is that you can use them on the space before the first letter or anywhere in between the next word or the word you are typing. The nitro will skip that word, all the continuous characters, up to the next space. You will then continue typing after the nitro has skipped the word. However, what some of you might not know is that nitros can be used to skip punctuation as well. Periods, question marks, commas, and semicolons all occur directly after a word and can be skipped using a nitro on that word. For me personally, I find periods the hardest punctuation to type, so I normally use a nitro at the end of a sentence. Nitros are also incredibly useful if you have to claw back at the end of a race to beat the CPU or to beat an opponent. Focus in on the text, know which word you're going to use the nitro for, and try to speed up as best you can. Use the nitro in an attempt to win the race. It usually works for me, and the more experience you have doing it, the easier it is to do. This is especially effective at lower speeds because nitros are more effective at those speeds. So those are my nitro tips, and this concludes the first part of the comprehensive guide to nitro type on nitros. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in my next video. If you made it this far, congratulations. Hit the like button or the dislike button and tell me what you thought about this video. You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to get updates when I release my next video. You can also send me a friend request on NitroType and I'll put my user link in the description. If you are around my same average or lower and you beat me in a friends race, I'll send you 100K. So it's a good opportunity if you want to earn easy cash.